All my life, I've always tried to be normal. It might sound very strange to some people, but as an artist, it's very difficult to be normal. I have always thought about what it would be like to have a 9 to 5 job, to be like a lot of my friends who have sort of this quote unquote normal life. When I was at the university, I tried to change from music to something else, to maybe business or law, but that didn't succeed. So I don't know. I will continue to think that I can be normal, but it's probably never going to be.
So definitely you're not normal.
No, I'm not normal.
What does it mean?
I don't know. I think there's always, you always think it's better on the other side. Grass is always greener on the other side. I see some of my friends who have very regular schedules and things like this, and 9 to 5, and they know when, their next salary is going to come in. They know everything is very well planned. And I think about that. I need to have structure, which is kind of a paradox doing what I do. There's anything but structure, but I always look for a structure.
You mean in your agenda?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to make a structure in order to know how to make 10 different things happen. I think, especially a city like New York, every artist I know has more than one job. They're always doing something different. And how do you create a structure? And that structure is really key to how you live every day. Without that structure, you will be completely lost.
What do you remember from your first contact with the piano? And it was very early in your life.
It was very early. I think the first thing I remember, maybe it's based on stories that my mother told me, was I think perhaps I was 6 years old, and I had a teacher coming to our home every week. I don't think I was a big fan of piano at that time, because with piano comes practicing and discipline, and I don't know a child who likes that. And my mother told me that I did so poorly at the lesson. My teacher said, "Oh, you should just throw away the piano book. You're so bad." So I did throw away the piano book, because the following week when the teacher came, she said, "Where's your piano book?" And I said, "I threw it in the trash can." And I remember that because my mother really gave me a hard time afterwards. That's my memory of piano, strangely enough, yes.
You started to study the piano very early in your life. What are the pros and the cons about starting so early?
I think the pros, I guess not just in piano, in anything, language. I think the piano and music is like a language. And when you start early, things just come easier and they stick also. It's a lot easier, for someone to start piano at 4 than someone who starts piano at 40. The cons is maybe there are times I could have been playing outside with other children, but I didn't because I had to practice my piano and I had to have my piano lessons. But looking back, I don't think there were a lot of cons. It was more like pros. And I think a lot of children who study music at an early age really develop this extra skills, which they might not realize, but they could definitely implement later on in life. To learn an instrument, that's coordination, discipline, not to mention appreciation for the arts.
You've been taught very early in your life. How would you define your approach now?
Okay. I think being a teacher is very, very satisfying because you're learning with your students as you go. You might not realize, but you have to know more than your students do. And I find it very challenging to find things that they might not know, so I can contribute somehow to their lives. And I would say I'm a very liberal teacher. I'm very open-minded, and I expect discipline, but I don't expect, there's no absolute answer. There's always maybes, It's never yes or no, but it's just like in any arts. And I think being an artist, that's the most important thing, is knowing when to really find your own things. I am hoping to do that as a teacher. When they become very creative, they bring me things that I'm surprised that they actually are interested in. That's when I know that I'm doing something correct.
Is there something essential that is not possible to teach?
What is not possible to teach? That's a really difficult question. I don't think it's possible to teach perfection. I don't think it's possible to teach interpretation or personality, something that's unique to each individual. What I can teach is to encourage them to find their own voice. I can't tell them how they should be. So that you can't teach.
Coming back to you, how did you find your own voice?
It's very difficult to say. I think part of being an artist or a musician, it always has a lot of relationship to your actual life. I mean, that's your life. The art is your life. And you need to survive. And in order to continue surviving, you have to continue to look for new things and to find yourself and to discover something new all the time. And as a musician, if I'm always in the same place, I might as well just not be alive. So I'm always trying to find something new every year, to bring the audience something new every year. And I've discovered that that's what keeps me going, this constant curiosity to find new things. Along the way, I've discovered that that's what interests me. There are people who do different things. There are people who like to conserve. They like to make what's old even better and better and better on the same things. I mean, of course, I love that, but I like to find new things. And I want to bring those new things to more people. I would say by now, I've discovered that that's what I'm really good at.
Is there a clear line separating your daily life and your life on stage?
Separating, well, the life on stage is something that's very addictive. And I find that to be the driving force of my daily life. I don't think there's a separation because my daily life is almost like a constant preparation for the life on stage.
What do you mean?
Well, you're trying to take care of yourself because live on stage is not easy and the traveling involved is not easy. So when you're living daily, everything that you do is really to prepare for that concert that's coming up in 3 days, for that recording or for that big presentation that's coming up in 2 weeks. So every little thing that you do every day is really leading up to that event. You have to practice. That's a preparation itself. You practice to the point where when you're on stage, all you have to think about is just to play. Because, you have to be always 120% prepared. Because when you're on stage, that's it. That's your only shot. That's why being a musician or any sort of performing arts, it's 24/7, always. I mean, your daily life consists of everything that you need to do for that event that's coming up. And I think that's something probably most obvious for dancers. I would imagine a dancer's life, every minute of their life, has to be in preparation for the big show. So, I mean, that comes back to the thing about being structured. Maybe that is the structure, is knowing how to structure your life to prepare for that event.
So it's about taking care of your energy. Basically, it's about that.
Absolutely. Taking care of your energy. That's a great way to describe that. But also to take care of your work and how you're going to be creating the next work and preparing, gathering information. It's not that you're giving an assignment because at one point, no one is telling you what to do. You have to do those things.
What kind of experience do you want to offer to your audience when you're playing on stage?
I would love to, every time that I perform, that audience are going to leave the concert and really feel like they learned something new, a new sensation, a new feeling, a new knowledge about anything. So that going to a concert is an experience in itself. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go hear something that I already know, and I'm just there because I don't know, because I need to be seen. but that they're going to walk away thinking, oh, wow, I've never heard that before. What was that? Oh, I've never thought that classical music could be this way. Or, that really made me think of this and that, to create a dialogue that the audience will have afterwards, walking away thinking about this event.
How can you know that it's happening?
I don't think you can know, but you can know when, now with the internet, sometimes the audience, they write to you and they share their experience with you. I mean, that's always really wonderful. But I don't think you know, and I don't think it matters. I don't think you need to know. But you sometimes can feel the vibe in the space, when people are really, truly listening and people are really enjoying it.
Do you think that your audience hears the same thing than you on stage?
I think there's a certain message, if you like, that I hope to convey through performances. Of course, when you are performing as a musician, that's your way of communication with the audience, is through playing an instrument or singing or composing. And I can only do my very best in hoping that they will get the message. It's really difficult to know what kind of message they actually receive. But, you hope that whatever the message that you have delivered will stay with some people, and somehow they want to come back for more. And that's where I hope to bring them new things every year or every concert.
How do you prepare yourself just before performing on stage?
It depends on the performance. I do know that I try not to eat too complicated foods because the last thing you need is a tummy ache. I think rest, sleep is always very important, but you're never really resting. You're just trying to stay as calm as you can, and breathing is very important.
Tell me about that.
Sometimes when you're so involved in something, especially in the performance art, I think people forget to breathe. I noticed that with students as well. Breathing comes with energy, and breathing actually helps relaxation. I mean, it might sound kind of vague, but it's something that I've been trying to do, is to really understand how breathing is connected to performing. Of course, being a pianist, you always get a different instrument everywhere you go, and that always poses a challenge. And I always hope that wherever I go, the venue will provide sufficient time for me to be on the instrument. So that's a very important preparation, is to really know what instrument I'm going to be dealing with.
How would you describe your relationship to the piano, considering that you have to play on stage with a different instrument?
In the beginning, when I was younger, I loved to complain, oh, this piano was terrible, or I played bad because the instrument was bad. But after a while, you take whatever is given to you and you try to make the best out of it. I have accepted that that's part of the job, that you just have to deal with whatever instrument is given to you.
Is it still your music, even if you play on a bad instrument, on a bad piano?
Absolutely. The instrument is there. Your personality is going to go through that regardless of how bad it is. The way you play has to do with how you approach the keys and the timing and the interpretation, and all of that can be conveyed through an instrument that's not so great. It might not sound 100% because it might be a little bit out of tune. It might not be well regulated. I've also had pianos where there was a key missing, but still, at the end of the day, whoever plays it, the music is going to become the personality of that person.
Music is not only about sound.
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, it is about sound, but it's about the vibration in the sound. It's about what happens in the air. And what's so interesting is that you can have 10 different people playing the same thing, and there would be 10 different versions of that thing. And every instrument is a living thing only when a human plays the music through it.
Do you like to take risks on stage?
Yes, I do. I do. I like to try things sometimes when I feel very good on stage. I actually will try things that I've never tried before at home.
Can you give me an example?
Well, maybe playing a passage a little bit faster than it needs to be. Or if I had planned to do something with a crescendo getting louder, and I decided, you know what? I don't feel like doing that today. I'm going to try something different. I've done that, and I think that's very natural. I don't think it's possible not to take risks on stage because then the performance would become very boring. It's just how much risk is always the danger, if you like. But it's very exciting to take risks, and the audience can feel that you're doing something different. It's the tension that you get from taking risks.
Your presence.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always tell when a performer is really involved at the moment. There are performers who are not so involved at certain times during performances. They might be just doing something that they've been doing about 100 times. But you can feel when someone is not doing that and just performing at the moment. You know, a lot of pianists or musicians, I would say, like, maybe in the older times, you could hear a lot more of that. Now that you have so many recordings, so perfection is always this aim that when you play a concert, it has to be perfect. Because we hear recordings now, and recordings are always perfect. So performers try to reproduce that perfection on stage. And very often the sacrifice is what we were talking about, is taking risks. And back in the older times, you don't have so many recordings. These great pianists like Horowitz, they all show up and then they just play. There could be like, I don't know, 10 wrong notes in one passage, but it's very exciting.
More than perfection?
More than perfection, yeah. I think perfection is definitely not very exciting.
What does the word perfection mean to you?
Perfection means, I'm not sure. I mean, perfection could mean that, you know, you didn't make any mistakes.
Is it enough?
No. And I don't think it's possible. I would just have the machine do it. I've never thought about the word perfection, to be honest.
But you talk about perfection.
I do talk about it because I don't feel that it's a goal, that it should be a goal. And most of the time it has a negative connotation to it. If you look at a lot of paintings of great artists, there's always something wrong with it, and that's why it's so beautiful. Same thing in music.
What are you looking for yourself on stage? Presence? Something else?
You know, I look for comfort. I would like to be comfortable. That's a physical thing. Because when you're completely comfortable, then you can, you know, bring whatever you can do and more. Because it gives you the liberty to do a lot of things. You know, I don't think about that very much. I don't think I think a lot when I'm on stage. It's really a sharing of emotions and of this great music that I try to share with the audience. And I try not to think. When you think too much, something else always happens. Maybe by thinking it takes you out of the context of the music or the mood or something. There's a lot of thinking involved before the moment that you go on stage. Because the moment on stage is the moment that where all the thinking kind of should just be in the back.
Some composers have written for you. Does it change something when you play these pieces written for you on stage?
It doesn't change very much. What's really exciting is that very often when a composer writes for you, you might be playing that piece for the first time because it's new and no one has heard it. And that's very exciting. Is that there you're sort of giving life to this new piece and that you're sharing this undiscovered sounds to the audience. And that's very exciting. The issue with a lot of new compositions nowadays is that you don't get a lot of repeat performances. And so that moment of the premieres, that's usually the most wonderful time for not just the audience, but the composers themselves too. Because, you know, when they're composing something, they don't get to hear it. When it's on stage, it's a completely different sensation.
Do you have some memories about that?
Well, there was this one composer who he was so unsure of this piece that he wrote for me. And I kept telling him, it's a great piece. Don't worry. You will know. You will hear it. And even till the moment that I was going on, he was still sort of scratching his head going, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't play it. I'm not sure if it's good. And then after the performance, people went crazy that it was so exciting and it was wonderful. And he was in tears when he came backstage because he didn't know, because he was so unsure. And he didn't realize that he wrote something really great and people actually liked it. And so in a way, my job was done. And I see myself sort of as the middle person between the audience and the composers. And also to really present a lot of great things that have been, not discovered, that needs to be discovered, and as well as an advocate for music. Most of all, I think an entertainer, maybe, if I can use that word. People don't use the word entertainment for classical music, but I think that should be a word that should be used more for classical music.
Tell me why.
Classical music has a tendency to get sort of this bad reputation. It's very boring. It's for old people and, dead music. And I think it needs to change. It needs to have an element of excitement that comes with entertainment. I mean, we had these great people like Bernstein, and back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And you had people like great conductors, Toscanini and Stokowski. They were all bringing music to the masses, to people, not just people who buy tickets to go concerts. I mean, they were on TV, and they were bringing this great classical music to people's living rooms. Of course, times change now. It's very different. We have the internet. But in some ways, classical music still sort of gets stuck in concert halls, And I don't know why we can't make it a little bit more entertaining without losing the quality. I'm trying myself to figure this out, and that's something that I'm going to continue to think about. How to make it more a show without losing, of course. I'm not trying to say we're not going to cheapen it and we're going to have high quality, but how do we make it so that people are more engaged and not just coming because they have a subscription or someone gave them a ticket to go see an orchestra play?
Do you like silence?
Are you thinking about being alone or just silence, the sound in general? See, that's very different as well. And there's silence in your head, and there's just silence in terms of sound. But I think a musician without the ability to find silence in their brain probably will be really difficult to be a musician. Because you need that space, and you're constantly working with sound. And silence is part of the sound. Without silence, there's no music. There's no sound. I mean, composers use silence to create tension, phrase, and it's all part of the sound world.
I'm going to leave the room. Okay. Please hold the microphone and add whatever you want to the interview.
I'm not sure what to add, but it's really exciting to be part of this series of interviews. I think by adding silence of the room is really wonderful. Perhaps we can add a moment of that.